Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I am here with a bit of a sequel to a video that I did last year. Last year I did a top 10 fall / Halloween reads rec list, and since I've read enough to fill up another one, let's do part 2 of that. So the first one that I wanted to recommend is the Dracula audiobook narration that I did last month. This was the full cast narration starring Alan Cumming and Tim Curry. I found it to be absolutely delightful. Dracula is just such a formative story. There's so many cultural references that have come out of it, and there's so many stories that have used it as inspiration, so it was fun to get all of those references. And then also, just, it turns out that Dracula's really funny. Like, I didn't know that, but apparently it is. It feels a little silly to try to talk about the plot of Dracula, since it is one of those just so well known in our culture, but it is done all in document format, so it's all in diary form and letter form and newspaper articles, telegrams, all those kinds of things. And the full cast narration works in a way that each writer has a different voice actor, and they all work really well. I thought that all of the voice actors were great, except for maybe Lucy, who I didn't really love, but all of the rest of them were fantastic, and I just had a really good time with it. So the next book that I wanted to include on this list is just a little bit a joke. It's mostly serious, but it's a little bit of a joke. It is Bunnicula by Deborah and James Howe. This is a book that I read as a child over and over again. It is written from the point of view of the dog Harold, and Chester the cat becomes very concerned when their owners bring home a new bunny because he is convinced that it is a vampire bunny. And also vegetables start turning up in the fridge, drained white of all their juices with 2 little puncture marks in them. This book is adorable. It is mostly meant for very young readers, but obviously I enjoyed it a lot as a child, and I reread it this year, and it's just a lot of fun. So I decided to just go ahead and get all of the vampire stuff out of the way right in the beginning, so I also wanted to include on this list Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. This was actually written about 15 or 20 years before Dracula, and it is just the most delightfully trashy lesbian vampire gothic I couldn't even say that I've ever read, because I've never read another one. It is very short, it will not take you very long to get through. The audiobook is only 3 hours, and I enjoyed it so much. The main character, Laura, is a young English girl who has been growing up in I don't remember the name of the country, but it's some Eastern European country in sort of the middle of nowhere because her father bought an estate out there, and they are just out walking their grounds one night and a carriage ends up having an accident right by them, and there is a young girl who is sort of dazed after the accident, and they agree to look after her while her mother continues on her journey. And obviously this goes super well. It's so trashy, but it was so delightful. So the next book on here is sort of changing gears. It is This Is Not a Test by Courtney Summers. This one I picked up and read a couple years ago, and it was described to me as The Breakfast Club meets zombies, and honestly, that's fairly accurate. So the basic premise of this story is that it's about a group of teenagers who have barricaded themselves inside a high school in order to survive the zombie apocalypse that is happening out in the rest of the world. And the main character, Sloane, is a girl who actually didn't really want to survive. She had been suffering a lot of abuse, and she was actually very suicidal and had just kind of lain down in the middle of the street while this all was happening. And these group of teens thought that she had just like tripped and fallen, so they ended up sort of dragging her up and ran along with them into this high school. And now she's kind of trapped inside it, because if she leaves, then she might draw the zombies toward the remaining people. And while she is suicidal and doesn't really want to be alive, she also doesn't want to hurt the people in the school. And so it is a really tough book to get through, you might have imagined based on what I just described, but also, oh my god, it stuck with me for a long time. And she wrote a sort of sequel novella wherein a couple of the survivors of the school run into like doomsday preppers, and that was amazing. So Courtney Summers writes books, a lot of her books deal with bullying and abuse and a lot of really tough topics. And this book basically does not shy away from any of that. And so the combination of like the real human emotions, and also there are zombies outside, and that's a problem, made for a really compelling story. So the next book on the list, number 5, is Illuminate by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is again completely changing gears, as this is a YA futuristic sci-fi novel. Now, this one you would maybe not immediately think would be something like a horror novel, but it turns out that it actually has a lot of elements that I personally at least would classify as horror, and beyond that, it is just fabulous. I loved this book because it's got like elements of the graphic novel to it, because again, it's all done in document format, and so it's got a lot of things like official records and email transcripts and IM conversations and transcripts of audio files and like a first-hand narrative account of like security camera footage. It's got diagrams, and it's really cool. The basic plot of Illuminate is that there is a trio of ships that are all on the run from a remaining corporation battle destroyer after a fight at this colony that the corporation showed up and started bombing, and the main characters are Katie and Ezra, who are both teenagers who had actually like just broken up right before the corporation showed up and started bombing them. So they're like having to figure out their feelings for each other while also this all is happening. So number 6 on my list is switching back to modern day. It is going to be The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one, it's not technically horror. I think that there are some moments that are sort of horror-esque or horror-light, but it is extremely atmospheric, and also I just loved it. This is one of those that's kind of hard to describe because technically what the story is about is not actually what the story is like about in a broader sense, but in a very narrow sense, it is about 4 boys who are searching for the lost Welsh king Glendower, and they are searching around ley lines, and also the main character Blue belongs to a family of psychics, and she is the only non-psychic in the family, but she also has a prophecy or prediction around her. Every psychic that meets her tells her that when she kisses her true love, they will die. Gansey is the main leader of the group of 4 boys, and they end up colliding, and I found this book really like transporting. It is light on the magic and light on the horror, but when it's used, I find it to be used really effectively. And also it's just really heavy on the found family and family of choice things, which are really good for me. Next on the list is going to be one that I don't think I've ever mentioned on this channel. It is Imaginary Girls by Nova Rensuma. This is a book that, again, I think I read a couple years ago, and it is, oh, it's hard. It's another one that's hard to describe. You could kind of classify it as fantasy. You could kind of classify it as horror. It feels slightly surrealistic and almost like it's got some magical realism elements to it. The main characters of this book are 2 sisters, the younger one Chloe, who is the narrator, and her older sister Ruby. And Ruby is the girl that like everyone in town looks up to, everyone wants to be, and Chloe has pretty much always been in her shadow, but she also is really attached to Ruby. And they are all out with their friends one night swimming in the reservoir, and something goes wrong, and Chloe ends up discovering the body of one of her classmates floating in the reservoir. And so Chloe is then sent away from Ruby, but 2 years later Ruby ends up bringing her back, and it is about sort of the ties of family, and it is about what happened that night, what actually happened that night, and it is about the reservoir and the sort of myth almost that surrounds the reservoir. But it was so eerie, and the relationship between Chloe and Ruby was slightly destructive but really compelling. So it's got some elements of mystery, it's got some elements of suspense, and it does also have a slight surrealistic magical realism element to it. So I highly recommend this book. Next up on the list is going to be going back in time a little bit to Agatha Christie with And Then There Were None. Last year, actually, I recommended 10 by Gretchen McNeil, which is a modern day retelling of And Then There Were None, but I decided that this year, why not do the original? This is a book that I actually read when I was maybe a little bit too young for it. I read it in middle school, and honestly, it like really freaked me out. I was 12, to be clear. I don't know that it would freak me out as badly now, but it is a kind of unsettling premise. So the idea of it is that 10 strangers are invited out to a party on this island that is pretty much deserted, and there's this big mansion on the island, and their host is just mysteriously not there, and suddenly a recording starts to play throughout the whole house and accuses each of the guests very specifically by name of murder of, again, a very specific person by name. Or at least one person, some of them it's multiple. And of course all the people deny this and they all have some sort of explanation for what happened, like it was an accident or etc. But obviously, as you can imagine, the truth might be slightly more complicated than that. And also, slowly, one by one, they all start getting killed off to the tune of this nursery rhyme that has gone through several racist iterations, but the non-racist version is 10 Little Soldier Boys. And it's one of those 10 little soldier boys doing whatever, something happened, and then there were 9, and it slowly counts down from that, and so they all start getting picked off along the ways of them dying in the nursery rhyme. Another reason that I am bringing up And Then There Were None in this list is because BBC recently did a mini-series of And Then There Were None, and I thought that it was fantastic. It's one of those that just like really leaned into this slight ridiculousness of the situation, and it also has some really good actors in it, including Charles Dance, who was in Game of Thrones, and some other people that you might recognize. So this one is just a straight up mystery thriller suspense novel. There are no fantasy elements to it, but if that is the kind of thing that you're looking for, I recommend you check it out. So the next book on the list is making a move again back into the Gothic, only this time it is a modern Gothic. It is the Lynburn Legacy by Sarah Rees Brennan. The first book is called Unspoken, and it is about a young girl who lives in small town England, and she has had a voice in her head of a boy named Jared her whole life, and she has never been sure if Jared is real or not. And then Jared shows up, and it turns out that Jared is Jared Lynburn of the prominent Lynburn family in her town who left mysteriously many years ago and have all just now returned. Cammy, the main character, is something of a like Nancy Drew, Veronica Mars type intrepid teen reporter. She is an incredible main character. This book series is absolutely wonderful. The third book made me just like break down crying multiple times, and it's got some great Gothic tropes in it, which I'm not going to spoil, but there might be someone that gets buried alive. It's got magic, it's got friendship, and it's got some really wonderful characters and some really wonderful relationships, both platonic and romantic. So, number 10, the final book on the list, I have decided to go with The Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich. The first book is called Midnight Riot. This is something of a police procedural mixed with magic kind of a book, so I would not describe it as horror, but it is fun for the season because the first book does include ghosts, so I think that it counts. The main character is a rookie in the Metropolitan Police Force of London, and he is guarding a murder scene very late at night, very early in the morning, when a ghost suddenly shows up to the scene and says, "Hey, I saw the murder," and he suddenly has to take a witness statement from a ghost. He then ends up getting picked up by the one remaining wizard in London, who is also the head of the sort of paranormal investigations unit of the Metropolitan Police, which is basically just him. And so Peter, the main character, the rookie police officer, ends up becoming also an apprentice wizard, and it is it's so much fun. This book series is still ongoing. There are 5 books currently out. Book 6, I believe, is coming out early next year, and I just love this series. It's one of those where every time the new book comes out, I rush to read it immediately. So that is going to be everything for my top 10 fall/Halloween reading rec list. Let me know what your favorite seasonal reads are down in the comments, and I will see you guys very soon with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye!